And in the bottom right, in the blue for Team Liquid, Elazer.
And up here in the top left-hand side, we have our red Protoss player. He is Krystianer from Team Elazer.
Wait, did you say Krystianer? I heard Blazer and I was looking for you to say Krystianer. I'm like, wait a minute.
I thought I said Krystianer.
I may have just missed it. I'm just like, wait a minute. I'm waiting for the hook so I intro.
I thought maybe you were just some production thing was going on and you were handling it.
No,
for those who don't know, Bamels the Legend and similar to Wardy is basically running the whole stream, and I'm just chilling. I got my hands off the keyboard. I pull the mic closer to me, like set my observer vision on to Bamel, and he's doing all the hard work. So,
just like production things, like we can look at the fact that Elazer is 15-1 against Krystianer lifetime.
Yeah, believe it. Yeah. It's a bit rough, but I think it is representative of just the fact that Krystianer has come up, I would say, like, it's not that he hasn't been a player for a bit, but Krystianer has, I would say, gotten a lot better in the past, like, a year or two, maybe like 2 to 3 years is a fair thing to say. And Elazer's been around for a while, and like that one win that Krystianer has was actually the last match that they played. And that was like back in November of last year. So I think that's actually a pretty good representation of what I think of like these two players, where Elazer's the heavy favorite, but a lot of that's based on like past history and everything. And Krystianer is a very different player than he was way back when Elazer's completely dominated him in the past.
Yeah, I'm also really curious as to how Krystianer is going to play this, right? Because Krystianer, right, he was playing a very stylistic PvZ for a while. He was a big fan of the double Stargate play, even after it kind of got nerfed. Going for these fleets and like going for lair snipes with Void Rays and things like that. And I don't think that's super relevant. I don't think that's super viable now. So I don't think I've seen much of Krystianer. I mean, I think the last time I cast Krystianer, he had made his way to the finals of an EPT in May. I think he ran into Dark and he did the Void Ray thing 3 times in a row, got absolutely spanked by Dark, and that was how things went. But I'm really curious to see how he's playing now, because again, we don't get to see a lot of Krystianer in a lot of these tournaments.
Yeah, I think my association of Krystianer, and I actually mean this in the most positive way, especially since I personally enjoy these kind of pros players, as we do have the depth shading on in. Finding 2 drones already not too shabby, but it does seem like both the adepts may end up dying over here, unfortunately. I was gonna say, like, I actually associate Krystianer as being a little bit of a memer sometimes. Like, he's one of those players that can meme, and I don't necessarily always mean as some kind of all-in. I sometimes mean it's like you were saying, some kind of Stargate play where it's like snipe the lair, or going into a super late game sky toss kind of army. It's the kind of Protoss player that I think of that Zerg players just like shake their fists as, like, darn you, going for insert X strategy Scarlet is currently complaining about, or something like kind of player. So I feel like he's good at finding those little things that are good to abuse in the current meta.
Well, like, good to abuse in the current meta, like, you know, pulling something back from about 2 years ago. Because this is Oracle into Glaive Adepts. This is a build that Stats was using to great effect literally 2-3 years ago, like right before he went off to military. And then it kind of fell out for somewhat obvious reasons. We went to double Stargate play. People got really, really comfortable dealing with Adepts. But for now, actually, we have a Twilight, right? Yeah, we do. There's nothing researching on it just yet, but this is a very early Warp Prism for the Twilight. So I guess instead it's going to be some early 4-gate pressure and Charge Lot Archon. Okay, very, very different.
I'm confused why he hasn't started Charge, though. If he was going to go for that, like, he had the resources for it for a while.
He still does.
He still does after throwing down the Nexus. I guess he wanted to get up a pylon, but he already has a lot of supply to work with. Yeah, I'm not, okay, you know what? More and more in Behemoth, I'm thinking he thought he started it, but yeah, it hasn't. That, like, because otherwise it's really hard to imagine a situation where a Protoss player is going for like that, unless he's about to start up like Sonic Storm or something really fast, but I don't think that's happening.
He's getting, no, absolutely. Yeah, he built 2 Archons. or he built 4 High Templar, which is going to be 2 Archons, and that, yeah, you need, charge needs to be with this. So I worry now that, I mean, Elazer's just going to be able to cancel this base. There's an Oracle here maybe, or that maybe cleans things up, but yeah, Krystianer's getting ready for a push. He's gonna run across the map in like a minute and a half. He's gonna have maybe 4 Archons, and there's charge. Finally, there's charge. So I mean, I guess this times out with +1 really nicely. So there is that.
I don't even know if it does. I think +1 is gonna take a lot longer than charge,
Fair,
right?
yeah.
So I think charge will finish around the time that +1 is like halfway done.
So it's not even like he saved a lot, right? Krystianer was banking a little bit of money. If it's not one of those, I'm going to get the Twilight because this lets me get my my Templar Archives on time or whatever it is, and I'm just going to go back for charge. Like, it's going to be okay. He was banking, and in the meantime, I'm going to build a lot of drones. I'm going to get a 3rd or shield batteries or something. But he was banking more than the money that was required pretty much the entire time.
Yeah, whether it was a mistake or not, like it seems like he's either decided he is not going to put on maybe a bit of the earlier aggression that we were thinking about, and he's just going to go and deal with like a little bit of Archon Warp Prism harassment, which we haven't seen for a hot second. See what he can get done with that, and I think in the end it's just all going to end up being okay. It was just a little bit weird to see. We usually don't see a Protoss player doing that kind of opening, and it's maybe a bit vulnerable to like some aggression if Elazer decided to attack into him a bit earlier, but that didn't happen. So I guess it kind of all ends up balancing out in the end.
Ooh, and he's getting some drones here too. He sniped a Queen. That's always nice, especially if you want to hit some sort of pressure timing later on, as the Biles will not land. Good dodge there, Krystianer. But if anything you can do to shut down the defensive utility of the Zerg player, right? Kill Queens, remove energy from the Queens. That does power up your later timings, whether that is the Charge Lot Archon thing. But as I say that, Krystianer's taking a 4th base. Like, everything that we were looking at in this game felt like he was going to get aggressive off this, right? You know, you set up like you're going to get a quick charge, you get these Archons early, and the 4th base, by the way, got canceled. So really,
yeah,
maybe not. But that's a couple Overlords. Thank you, Elazer.
Yeah, Elazer Overlords. Although I think he could use a few more. Also, I want to take back what I said. Charge takes a lot longer to finish up than I thought. It actually did time out with +1 weapons. So, maybe this has been his plan all along.
I mean, this is a beefy army. When it's 5 Immortals, 4 Archons, a bunch of charge lots. Yeah, army supply 20 in the good for Elazer, but if you're able to get your reinforcements right, I mean, how many gateways do we have right now? We got, that's 8 Zealots that can run in 16 more army supply right there. Yeah, I don't hate it.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit worried about Elazer not having Baneling speed just yet when he's morphing in 39 Banelings, and force fields definitely make things a lot more complicated. Archon's also going to be masters at soaking up any of these Banelings that try and find connections. His choke point is making things so awkward as well. Finally, the Zealots do start taking a bit of damage there on the front lines. Banelings make their way in and soften up more of these Zealots. Is there actually going to be enough over here for Elazer to clean up? The Immortals on the front lines finally getting taken out. And it does seem like Elazer is going to clean up that army. Takes the first game. Quite a strange one, I will say.
Yeah, I was looking at that fight. It's like, okay, well, good force fields. They segment things off very nicely. They do a good job there. Okay, well, that looks good. There are no Ravager piles, so you can't kill the force fields super quickly. You spent them earlier on. Technically, this should be a good fight. Archon's reading a lot of the Banelings. Seems good, and then everything evaporates. And the Lings coming from the right side, all the Immortals go down. And it's like, well, okay, maybe that wasn't quite as good of a fight as it was looking at the start.
Yeah, I will say, like, even though a lot of the Banelings did, like a handful of them got segmented off by the force fields and picked off and everything, but there was almost like 40 Banelings, and a fair number of them did manage to get connections on like the Zealots. I think 2 different times. There was like once when the Zealots actually did just move forward, and then a couple of Banelings got some really good connections off. And then I think the reinforcing around of Zealots were all clumped up, and a couple of Banelings made their way in, took out all the shields on them and stuff. So I think Elazer got surprisingly good Baneling connections, despite like how things started off. And just, yeah, there wasn't as much of the follow-up over there, I guess, for Krystianer's army, whereas Elazer was just powering out those kind of layer tech, not even layer tech, like those early game pre-layer tech units and stuff. So surprising kind of engagement there, but really great job by Elazer. Got to hand it to him on the defense, which initially looked a little bit scary.
Yeah, I think you're right. If those banelings don't sneak through another back line, you have 10 zealots running into that fight and buffering for the Archons and the Immortals instead of them all going down and just having to hold them back. So it turns out the banelings against zealots are a pretty good unit, even if they don't have baneling speed. But we get to move on to Babylon for map number 2. It's of course it's a slightly different map. You know, actually, you know, as I say that, it's about the same size. It's not that much bigger or smaller. But I wonder what Krystianer has in store for us, because I think it's fair to say, Fear Dragon, that we talk about things. Yeah, you're right. Krystianer is the underdog. It's on him to actually make something happen. We'll see what he can make something happen or not, because game 2's here. In the bottom right, in the blue, he's up a game. Elazer.
And up here in the top left, our red Protoss player, he is Krystianer. Yeah, kind of, again, funny last game. It ended up basically being it kind of turned into a 3-base all-in from Krystianer, where didn't really have much of a setup there because his 4th base got canceled and everything, and it turned into that weird situation. But he, again, did go for a much later kind of attack than we sometimes would maybe expect from like a Twilight Council Fast Templar Archives opening and everything. So I am very curious where his head's at on the matchup and how he wants to approach Elazer, because Elazer is one of the players that you do also have to be wary about him attacking into you. It's not like the typical Zerg player where you're thinking like, well, I'll set the pace of the game. Elazer sometimes just decides that he's gonna completely shift things up on you, not play the current meta, and just say, yeah, I'm gonna actually just force you to react to me.
Yeah, he's certainly one of those players that is not foreign at all. Very willing to go cut drones at 34 or 41 or something like that, run across the map, build a lot of roaches, and, well, show them all how powerful attacks it can be, or a subway, or whatever other way we can get a bunch of queens and roaches across the map very quickly. A stroll, maybe. The one, you know what we're missing, right? We have a subway, we have a Nidus, we have a taxi, we have overlords, we have a way to, your nice soul stroll. You can walk across. We're missing a boat. We're missing like a nice Polish cruise boat liner across the map.
The Polish cruise line, yeah, I like that.
Like, I guess that works on like an abyssal reef or something where you're all underwater. So I guess, you Polish submarine.
I feel like, the Overlord could have been a good boat metaphor, but like that one's already, involved with the German taxi and stuff. But I feel like an Overlord, it floats around. It's kind of like an aerial boat. It's like an air balloon, kind of.
Yeah, it shouldn't be German taxi. It should be German blimps. Oh wait, never.
German blimps.
we're not. Never mind.
Well, that didn't end so well. So.
Luckily, Overlords are they're filled with a non-flammable gas.
Is that lore confirmed? Actually,
I don't know. Actually, I don't know. No, it's got to be right, because when an Overlord dies, it doesn't explode.
What kind of gas floats and is like goes up that isn't flammable?
Helium.
Wait, helium isn't flammable?
Oh, helium's inert. Helium is inert. It's hydrogen that goes boom.
Okay. Well, just goes to show that I, in fact, failed most of my chemistry exams, and thank God in high school, my chemistry professor, literally like on the day of the final, just kind of like stood up, spoke up to the class, and said, well, they fired me anyway, so what are they going to do? And then he goes to the whiteboard and just starts writing the answers to the final. And I'm like, thank God I was going to fail this class. So, not my forte.
Luckily for your dragon, chemistry may have been, I wasn't a big fan of chemistry either, but I hope that we have chemistry that makes up for it. So there we go.
Speaking of chemistry, we have the chemistry of Zerglings with speed that almost managed to find us around on that Stalker. That was not going to end up happening, but I did want to transition to talking about the Twilight Council that's finishing up, because I want to ask you, Beowulf, what do you want to see from this? Do you want to see something similar to the last game? Do you want to see something like a little bit more changed up here with it, or what?
I want to see him use the Twilight. Like, I don't care what it is. There we go. Glaives are on the way. This is what we thought we were going to see last game. But I want you to build a Twilight at a timing that allows you to use it. Don't spend the money on it if it's not going to be useful. So Luckily, this time, this is Oracle into Adepts. This is a build that was pretty popular a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, less popular now. And Elazer, well, he doesn't have a Roach form, but he's got 26 Lings on the way, Roach form halfway done. So seems like he's got a pretty solid understanding of what's happening. And in general, I mean, he's on almost 50 workers. He's doing fine there. He's going to have more than enough. In fact, he's the one that's running across the map here trying to cancel the third.
Yeah, I was very curious. I was like, okay, Elazer's either identified some really subtle thing about the army placement or something like that that I'm just not aware of, or he was looking to get aggressive himself potentially, because he has just been flooding out those units at a fairly early time. It's going to actually end up working out well if he ends up intercepting any of these Adepts. So the Adepts are going to make their way across the map independent of the Zerglings. The Zerglings get batted back for, I want to say, like a quarter of a second against the Oracle before it runs out of energy. And now they're going to be able to cause all sorts of havoc, but Elazer has to defend on his own side of the map as well.
I mean, good news for Elazer, he is building a decent amount of roaches, so that does make life a little bit more complicated. And no workers have gone down just yet. The Adepts, they shade on top of an army, on top of queens, on top of roaches, on top of lings. And yes, drones are finally starting to fall here as the Adepts find their way to the main. But that bought a lot of time. That being said, on the other side, Lings have not killed the base. They got 4 probes. They've killed some Adepts here, and this is working out pretty nicely for Krystianer thus far as Elazer kind of scrambles to make sure something happens. 14 drones have hit the deck as the Adepts are finally going to get dealt with, but that is almost 20 dead workers here. That's a lot.
Yeah, so here's the counterpoint to this, Beowulf. How does Krystianer defend his third now? That's my one big fear, is that I actually think you're right. He did a ton of damage, but he didn't actually trade out that much versus the army. And I'm afraid that he just loses his third now, right? Like, there's no way he could defend it.
Yeah, this is a bit of a problem. This is one of the reasons why Glaive Adept pressure, like the really heavy pressure version, became less popular, because the Zerg doesn't tend to lose much of their army, then they can run across the map. But 3 shield batteries, 2 pylons, an Oracle on top. Elazer doesn't think he can break this, so he's going to back up, and that puts Krystianer in a decent spot.
That's really fascinating to me, because, you know, I would actually understand if he sees those 3 shield batteries and says, like, I've seen this happen many times before, right? Attacking the shield batteries and it doesn't go well. But I would have thought that he would still just go toward the natural or something, knock out the cyber core, get Lings into the main. It seems like he's just going to rotate around for a bit as he drones up behind it. Is that okay? I mean, he had the 4th base up before the Adept attack even came in. I'm not so sure.
Yeah, so if you look at where we stand right now, 18 Adepts for 19 drones and a bunch of Lings and some Queens and other things like that, I'd say that's kind of worthwhile. It certainly slows the Zerg down. Zerg now has to drone hard, so we're not going to see an explosion of Roaches and Lings for a while as Elazer, again, building more Overlords because he is Elazer. But at this point, okay, so actually the second question is, where is Krystianer going? Blink just about done. +1 on the way, getting that 4th base. So he moves into a very heavy Blink style. If he can force Roaches out of Elazer, which is, again, what you want to fight with these Stalkers, he's going to be in a decent spot, I think. But I mean, the Link count's already pretty high. +1 melee is halfway done. It's going to, well, actually, it's not going to time out with +1. So yeah, I think Krystianer's got a pretty solid timing.
All right, we'll see if he can make use of it. Stalkers are going to be making their way on forward, but there is not exactly a lot of detection. It's just the Oracle energy to try and clean up some of the creep spread and stuff, and that means that these Lings, these Roaches, are going to have a much easier time potentially getting surrounds or even just catching the Stalkers even after they blink. So it's going to be a bit of a dangerous game if Krystianer decides to hit that timing without ever getting up a robotics facility, which I don't know that you do with this, because it's going to be like kind of a little narrow window here, and he probably wants to invest everything he's got into just the units he's making.
Yeah, and that is one of the downsides of this build that Krystianer went for. I mean, he got certainly enough to equalize. I think that is pretty fair to say, but he's only got 1 Oracle, and you skip the Robo. I mean, that is in general how the hero style works. You skip Robo, you get 3 or 4 Oracles. They sit on top of the Stalkers. They make the Link surrounds not viable. But when you don't have a Warp Prism, or you don't have a Robo, so you can't build Warp Prisms, you can't do anything like that. As Lings look for the run by, they're not going to find it. When you don't have these Oracles on top to guard against the Lings, as powerful as this timing might have been from Krystianer, it is, again, you don't have anything to defend against the Lings. So more Oracles are getting made. The Robo is, again, we don't have that yet, so there's no Observer. And that just means, as powerful this army might be for Krystianer with the positive +1 Blink timing, you're right. He just can't move on the map. The creep is too scary.
Yeah, I think you did a really good job of summing it up, where it's just an awkward situation where he has almost everything he needs, but then he can't actually do the core premise of what this build and this style needs to be able to do, which is being active, finding trades and stuff. He's gonna be able to find some now over here as Bailings without speed are gonna come rolling on forward.
Yeah, now the Bailey speed is done as well. Stalkers have to run away, and because Krystianer couldn't put pressure on, well, the Stalkers, there's nowhere for them to blink to. So Bailings into the mineral line. 21 probes hit the deck, and the rest of the Stalkers go down as well. And Krystianer is, in fact, dead. And we see the issue with this Blink Stalker style. It's great if you can be aggressive. It's like Battle Mech. If you can be aggressive, if you can force tempo, it's going to be fantastic for you. But if you just have to sit at home and you don't have a wall behind it, it becomes kind of hard to deal.